Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I want to talk about why the AMC ape dividend is really being manipulated. I want to talk about what kind of manipulation was happening yesterday, why this manipulation was going on, and what kind of damage the AMC squeeze will really do to the financial system. So stay tuned and let's make some money. And I want to dive straight in with the key information. So, Peter Han tweeted saying, so if there was no issues with the AMC float, aka no synthetic shares or illegal short selling, would all this chaos have actually happened? And he answered his own question by saying, I think not. I think it's really obvious that both AMC and APE were manipulated yesterday to stop the squeeze. I think had APE have been released unmanipulated, the squeeze absolutely would have happened yesterday morning. But I think we've severely underestimated just how screwed these hedge funds and market makers really are, and just how many hedge funds will end up going bankrupt as a result of the squeeze. I think we could actually have underestimated the damage involved, and that's why basically every single organisation is doing whatever they can to stop the squeeze. So today I want to talk about the various different types of crime that happened yesterday, why this crime was ignored, and how much damage this could really do to the financial system. So today I want to touch on these various different bullet points, the AMC and APE volume and the trading of APE before platforms had even distributed the shares. I want to touch on IOUs, I want to touch on mainstream media FUD, I want to touch on this FINRA outage which stopped SEC employees from accessing the FINRA system. I want to talk about SHO Rule 201 and how these hedge funds had an exemption, and also the buy versus sell volume weighting. So you can see here yesterday from Fidelity customers, APE had 9,953 buy orders versus only 2,043 sells. Again, AMC had 8,000 buy orders versus only 2,390 sells. Now, what really fascinates me is how APE managed to trade 122 million shares when the majority of the float is locked up by retail investors. You could say, Tom, 2,000 retail investors sold their APE shares, and therefore these hedge funds had tons and tons of APE shares to work with and tons of APE shares to trade. But at the same time, retail investors scooped up the bag, those diamond-handed apes scooped up the APE shares that were being sold by those paper-handed apes. 95% of the float is held by retail investors, and any of those retail investors that paper-handed their APE, those shares went directly to other retail investors that were picking up the dropped bag. Therefore, these hedge funds and institutions only had 25 million shares yesterday to play with, if not less, but they still managed to trade 122 million shares in a single day. We also had basically 80% of all trades occurring being buy orders, but yet the stock still fell dramatically. Now, one of the reasons why this may have happened is because many of the brokers were supplementing their customers with fake IOUs before receiving the real shares. You saw this extract yesterday from TD Ameritrade basically saying that we post our shares to customers when we receive them. We do not yet have the shares to post to our customers. They followed up by saying, while we can't speak to the specific practices of other firms, some firms may decide to post shares to clients' accounts before they receive the actual shares. We do not. And Bigham said there has been market manipulation in broad daylight. Bona fide market makers are supposedly the only ones who are allowed to fill before locating actual shares. And he said, so why can brokers fill shares and fill orders and effectively facilitate trading before actually locating and receiving APE shares? Many of these platforms, especially like Cash App, were facilitating the trading of APE before shares had even been distributed to customers. And many of these other platforms may have distributed to you simply phony IOUs and not real shares, but they were still facilitating this trading. Now, I guess if these hedge funds are going around buying up phony IOUs and trading in a stock where the shares haven't even been distributed, that is a way they have pushed the stock down. But again, this is a perfect example of crime. But on top of that, hedge funds and market makers also had the perfect excuse to manipulate AMC further and commit even more crime, as they received an exemption to SHO Rule 201. Now, Rule 201 doesn't actually prevent halts from occurring like many speculated. Rule 201 actually prevents the execution or display of a short sale at an impermissible price when a stock has triggered a circuit breaker halt by experiencing a price decline of at least 10% in one day. Basically saying that circuit breaker halts will still happen. You can't buy shares during this circuit breaker halt and you can't sell shares during this circuit breaker halt, but with this exemption you can indeed still short those shares. With this exemption, there is nothing that prevents the execution of a short sale triggered during a circuit breaker haul. And it says the price test restrictions will apply to short sale orders in that security for the remainder of the day and the following day unless an exemption applies. Basically saying that because of this exemption, shorts can continue to short AMC and APE during the haul at a time when we can't buy. And obviously, to make sure that all of this manipulation and all of this crime is flying under the radar and isn't detected by the SEC, somebody effectively turned off FINRA's system. Yeagles tweeted this screenshot of the FINRA website showing their system status that shows that applications used by the SEC is currently experiencing a service outage. This screenshot shows that SEC users are currently not able to log into FINRA systems and therefore can't see any of the trades being reported. Now, this outage happened between the hours of 8 AM to 3:26 PM as this screenshot was shown by AMC Bigham's. That means these hedge funds and market makers had effectively 7.5 hours of uninterrupted market manipulation and crime because the SEC couldn't see what was going on. None of these trades were effectively going through the SEC, they weren't being reported to the SEC, and the SEC had no idea what was happening for 7.5 hours. Now, that is obviously the perfect time to commit as much crime as you possibly can, as much as you possibly want, because the SEC can't see what's going on. Now, at the same time, this crime was perfectly combined with a massive amount of mainstream media FUD. We saw tons of articles like this one from MSN saying that every single AMC theatre is shutting down. Obviously, this is a massive load of FUD, and it's an absolute outright lie, because obviously AMC theatres aren't closing down whatsoever. AMC has $1 billion worth of cash reserves and hasn't announced anything to do with Chapter 11 bankruptcy or anything to do with bankruptcy whatsoever. There was also 17 separate articles being ran on the Yahoo homepage about how AMC stock was falling during the day, and there was no positive news whatsoever. Now, at the same time, this massive amount of mainstream media FUD was being combined with videos from other YouTubers like Meet Kevin. Meet Kevin tweeted 20 times about APE and AMC today and posted a YouTube video on APE as well. I don't think Meet Kevin has even tweeted 20 times in a single day about Tesla or any one subject since he even started YouTube. Now, interestingly, Meet Kevin is also sponsored by The Motley Fool, and he's also sponsored by Seeking Alpha as well. Maybe Meet Kevin has changed sides and is now voicing the opinion of if you can't beat them, just join them. Obviously, if Meet Kevin is sponsored by Seeking Alpha and The Motley Fool, he may have to produce similar articles or similar videos to those news sources. aka he may potentially be being paid to bash AMC and APE because that's the exact same kind of articles that are being run by The Motley Fool and by Seeking Alpha. As Aero Ape said, maybe The Motley Fool has a daily AMC quota and Meet Kevin has to meet that quota. But now, why is all of this manipulation and crime actually happening? How dangerous is the AMC squeeze to the overall financial system, and how many hedge funds, major banks and institutions and market makers will actually be impacted? Now, originally I thought the AMC squeeze would have a fairly small impact on the wider financial system. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe I thought it'd have like a 3 rating impact. I thought that during the squeeze, maybe 5 to 10 separate hedge funds would be forced out of their positions, forced to close their short positions, and it would likely bankrupt maybe 5 to 10 firms, maybe even 15 hedge funds at a push. If these hedge funds are managing, say, $10 to $50 billion, that's still upwards of $500 billion worth of damage done to the overall financial system. Obviously, AMC is a stock with a $5 billion market cap. Even if there's 100 times this market cap betting against AMC that blew up, that's only $500 billion of damage and potentially 5 to 10, maybe 15 hedge funds going bankrupt. Maybe all along I'd somewhat underestimated that true impact on the financial system. Maybe the real impact was going to be, say, like a 5 out of 10. Maybe we'd see some large market makers like Citadel going bankrupt as well. Maybe we wouldn't see 5, 10, 15 hedge funds going bankrupt. Maybe we'd see 20, 30 or 50 and some large market makers as well, just like Citadel. Maybe that would cause, say, $1 trillion or $2 trillion or $5 trillion worth of damage. We would see some larger market makers going under and tons of hedge funds going bankrupt, but it wouldn't cripple the overall system as a whole. But I think really after yesterday's blatant display of crime that suffered no pushback and no recourse whatsoever and was completely ignored by the SEC, by the Department of Justice and by everyone, maybe the true impact on the financial system is a 10 out of 10 amount of damage. Maybe it's not just going to be a large market maker like Citadel that ends up going bankrupt. Maybe these large major banks like Bank of America and Credit Suisse will go bankrupt as well. Maybe it will kill off more than 2 of these major banks. Maybe we'll see Goldman Sachs going under and JP Morgan Chase going under as well. That would effectively damage the financial system more than the damage that occurred during 2008. It could effectively destroy Wall Street, blow up many of these major banks, and cripple practically every hedge fund out there in the market right now. 2008 caused, say, $30 trillion worth of damage to the financial system, and maybe the AMC squeeze will have such a domino impact that it will cause even more damage. Obviously, not even the New York Stock Exchange could avoid their way and kick the can around the 2008 recession, and they did suffer a massive amount of damage. And this is why I think that market makers, the New York Stock Exchange and the SEC and FINRA allowed all of this manipulation and crime to happen to effectively avoid the AMC squeeze. Because they know that if AMC squeezes, it will cause more damage to the financial system than the 2008 recession. But as I've said in previous videos, not even the New York Stock Exchange, not even the SEC and FINRA could avoid the 2008 market crash, the 2008 housing crisis that effectively caused that recession and caused that massive stock market drop. I do think when the stock market continues to crash, and I do think when this causes AMC to squeeze, this damage will be unavoidable. While these hedge funds can effectively kick the can on fail to delivers, they can create additional synthetic shares just like they did back in 2008. They can't avoid an all-out stock market crash and an all-out recession. And therefore I do think when this stock market crash happens, it will cause the squeeze that could potentially cause irreparable damage to the financial system. But guys, be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always guys, be sure to ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.